Hello, good morning, everyone. I've just been informed you can all hear me, and that's great. Thank you for the opportunity to make a contribution on this very important topic. The previous speaker has already elaborated on the importance of dual nationality, and so I'll not belabor the point. My task today is to speak on the steps one needs to go through to apply for citizenship in Ghana. Let me also say that from your end, if you're not a Ghanaian, then yes, you're going to apply to be a dual national. Our dual nationality dispensation, from my perspective or from where I sit, would usually be for those a Ghanaian who wants to acquire a second or third nationality to his Ghanaian nationality. So, as an immigration officer, when an application comes before me, it would usually be an application of a foreigner who wants to acquire Ghanaian citizenship in addition to his already existing citizenship or nationality, as the case. So, having said that, I would proceed. In Ghana, the previous speaker has already elaborated or mentioned that the 1992 Constitution is one of the or the main law that speaks to dual citizenship. Now, the law has also the Constitution mandated Parliament to now come out with specifics when it comes to applying for Ghanaian citizenship. So we have the Citizenship Act 2000 at 591 and its regulations, which is the Citizenship Regulations 2001 LI 1690. So there are three main ways through which a person can obtain Ghanaian citizenship otherwise than by birth. So that if you're not considered or if you're not born in Ghana or you're not necessarily born in Ghana, but if you're not, the constitution or the laws do not classify you or consider you as a person, a Ghanaian by birth. What are the other ways by which you could obtain Ghanaian citizenship? Okay, so the first is adoption. A child of not more than 16 years, whose parents, of course, are not Ghanaians, can apply and is adopted by a Ghanaian parent or Ghanaian citizen, would then become a Ghanaian by virtue of that adoption. The other two ways, which I'm going to delve into more detail, are by registration and naturalization. Now, registration in Ghana is usually, so there are two main ways apart from adoption. Um, Usually, and in practice, is for persons who are married to Ghanaian spouses. So it's either the man is married to a Ghanaian wife or the wife is married to a Ghanaian husband. Um, the process begins at the Ministry of Interior. We have forms. The forms are available. You purchase and then complete. There are required documentation that are supposed to be attached when submitting the forms at the Ministry of Interior. I'll go through shortly. Once those are submitted, the law requires the minister to forward to Ghana Immigration Service. That's where we come in to actually investigate, vet the applicants to be sure that everything is authentic and that the person or the applicant duly qualifies. So when it comes to marriage, the first thing we look at is the marriage certificate. Are you truly married? When did you get married? Are there children in the marriage? And all of that. So the marriage certificate is the main documentation that is supposed to be attached to your forms. Then we also have the If the person is employed, then you would also want to see the personal tax clearance certificate of such a person and the birth certificate of the Ghanaian spouse, as well as copies of his biodata page of his passport, if that's available. And then also would then come to the applicant, the biodata page of the applicant's passport, as well as his permits, if he's on permits, would take copies of that, and then his disembarkation and embarkation stamps. When you are coming into the country and when you are leaving, Ghana Immigration Service would usually put a stamp in your passport, so we take copies of that as well. So when it comes to registration, it's quite simple and not cumbersome because it's by virtue of your marriage to a Ghanaian. And so usually there are not much issues once you have the requisite documentation. So I'll quickly move on to naturalization, which I believe most of you would fall under. When it comes to naturalization, the law sets out quite a list of qualifications or factors that should be considered to qualify you to apply for naturalization to become a citizen of Ghana. Now, the first consideration that the law talks about, and this is section 14 of the Citizenship Act 2000, is that the person has resided in Ghana throughout the period of 12 months immediately preceding the date of the application. So the requirement here is that we are in 2024. So that if you want to apply or if you wanted to apply for citizenship through naturalization, 12 months, so we're in November, so we would calculate 12 months backwards, which would be November 2023. From November 2023 to November 2024, you ought to have resided continuously in the country for 12 months. This is a very onerous requirement and obligation on the applicant. So in practice, we appreciate the fact that applicants may have business meetings and engagements or probably even visiting family and all of that. So we don't insist on the 12 months continuous stay. Usually considerations are made, but at least in aggregate, you ought to have resided maybe about 9 months in aggregate. So it shouldn't even be continuous. So you can travel in and out for a week or two and all of that. So that's that for. So maybe when I'm done and there are questions, I can take that. The next requirement is that during the 7 years immediately preceding the period of 12 months, the person has resided in Ghana for periods amounting in the aggregate to not less than 5 years. So this means that we started our calculation from November 2023. Okay. So from November 2023, counting backwards or calculating backwards to 7 years. So 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, and that gives us that takes us to about 2016, if my calculation is right. So 7 years from 2023. The law is saying that you ought to have resided in aggregate not less than 5 years. It is looking at it's trying to glean your intention of residing permanently in Ghana, so that if in aggregate, calculating from that 7 years, you haven't resided in Ghana for at least 5 years, then it's as though you really are not serious about being in Ghana. So usually, you'd have people traveling in and out, but in aggregate, we look at 5 years from that 7 years. Okay. The next is that the person should be of good character and it should be attested by two Ghanaians. And usually in practice, what we do is it's part of the form. If you purchase the either the naturalization or the registration forms, there's a place for sponsorship for two Ghanaians. And those sponsors are supposed to would indicate how long they have known you, and whether you are a law-abiding citizen, you have, and all of that. And then they actually go ahead to write a letter attesting to your good character and why they think we should consider you for citizenship of Ghana, to grant you citizenship of Ghana. And the persons usually eligible for this, the law sets out, but it's quite a wide range. But you look at it, it is professionals like lawyers, medical doctors, chartered accountants, senior public officers. You have officers of the Ghana Armed Forces, not below the rank of lieutenant colonel or its equivalent in other security institutions. So at least you should be able to get two Ghanaians, judges, notaries public, who are also lawyers anyway. So that satisfies it. So you should be able to get at least two Ghanaians who fall within this category to sponsor and attest to your good character. The next is that the person, the applicant should not have been sentenced to any period of imprisonment in Ghana or anywhere for an offense recognized by law in Ghana. So usually another requirement for us in Ghana, we won't be able to tell whether we'll just ask you, but the due diligence we can do in Ghana is to request that you do a police to go for police checks, and then they would issue you with a police report that would actually confirm that you haven't been imprisoned or convicted of any offense, criminal offense in Ghana. Then, very important requirement is that the applicant is able to speak and understand an indigenous Ghanaian language. So, in Ghana, we have, several languages, over 40, I know. There's no restriction on which particular one, but at least you should be able to speak and understand at least just one. We realize that in our considerations, mostly it's the Tree language because it's widely spoken. So we do a few basic questioning and all of that just to ascertain whether you're able to understand an indigenous language. Okay. The next is that the applicant is a person who has made or is capable of making a substantial contribution to the progress or advancement in any area of national activity. I would say that this is the most important consideration or qualification for naturalization. And we are looking at, so it's either you have made a substantial contribution or you are capable of making. So if you are capable of making, of course, you'd have to prove to us. And the law puts the burden of proof on the applicant or the person applying to become a Ghanaian that he qualifies. So if you say you are capable or you have contributed substantially, then you would have to provide evidence. From my office, what we look at basically is what investments you have made. Now, the investments could take the form of monetary investment into the economy. We also look at health investments into the health sector or educational sector. It's not limited, but these are a few of the kind of investments. So, for instance, if you'd have medical doctors who come into the country, probably get into a rural area or somewhere, and they are taking care of Ghanaians, helping them with their health needs and healthcare and all of that. And that is something we could consider. You have professors and academics who come into the country to do research, help our educational system, lecture, and all of that. So these are also the kind of uh, investments that we look at. When it comes to business investments, these are we usually would request for your company registration documentation. That is, if then we presume that you may have incorporated a company, and then also we would look at your tax clearance certificates. That is, if the business, because we remember that you ought to have resided at least for 8 years, because 1 year, which is the 12 months continuous stay in the country, and also the 7 months, the 7 years prior to that 12 months. So we're looking at a period of 8 years. So we would look at your tax clearance, as in the corporate, that's the company tax clearance certificate. Look at how much the company is contributing, is paying as taxes. And then we look at your personal, as an applicant, your personal tax clearance certificate as well. How much have you paid in terms of taxes in Ghana? Then we also look at the SNIT clearance certificate, which would tell us how many people the company has employed, whether you are paying for their social securities and all of that. That's also another important thing we look at. Then, of course, your sponsors. The sponsors are both for naturalization and registration. And then we would also look at so basically these are the main and critical things we look at. You look at your GIPC certificate, whether it's valid. I've already mentioned police clearance certificate, and then a host of others. So these are all the due diligence we usually do to ascertain whether this person has, and of course, sometimes corporate social responsibilities or personal social responsibilities. We want to see your activities in that area as well. Now, the next is also whether the person has been assimilated into the Ghanaian way of life or somebody. So when you present your forms at the Ministry of Interior together with the supporting documents, it's brought to Ghana Immigration Service, and then our enforcement team would invite you, interview you, need if need be, pay visits to your company and all of that, request for all the necessary documentations. And it is through this engagement that we are able to tell whether you have assimilated into the Ghanaian way of life or otherwise. And then also we would look whether you have the intention to permanently reside in Ghana. And like I said earlier, this intention would be gleaned from your the length of your stay in Ghana, you know, and also whether you possess a valid residence permit at the time of application. So these are the main considerations that the law sets out um, when you want to apply for citizenship through naturalization. However, the law has given the minister a lot of powers, such that the minister, in special circumstances that he deems fit, may waive all of these requirements. The only exception that cannot be waived is the ability to speak and understand an indigenous language. That's the only exception that the law has made. But the minister has very wide powers to vary or waive uh, or even add to the requirements. And so at this point, when Ghana Immigration Service is done with all of its vetting, investigation, and all, we put together a report and forward the report either with our recommendations, either recommending that you should be considered or otherwise. And then we put all of that together with a file and forward to the Ministry of the Interior. At the Ministry of the Interior, I really cannot speak into the details of what goes on there. But what I can say is that once they approve of your application, then the list is compiled to the presidency for, because when it comes to citizenship, the law it is the president that has the power to approve, the ultimate power to approve for a person to become a citizen of Ghana, either through registration or naturalization. And when that is done, once approval is given, the Ministry of the Interior would usually contact you at an appropriate time, and for you to take the oath of allegiance, swear you in as
Can I start reading
a
some of the
Ghanaian.
questions
And then
sent to
upon that,
us
you are issued
so
with a
that
certificate
we can
of
respond to?
citizenship, either through naturalization or registration.
Okay,
So that is in short or
Madam
in brief the summary of
Amina
the steps that
asked, what
one needs to go
is the
through as an
process and
applicant
the cost
if you want to
of
apply to become
dual
a Ghanaian.
citizenship? The
Um,
cost. So this goes
I
to
think I've covered
Madam
almost
Abigail.
everything, but I'll be happy
Yeah,
to
yeah.
take questions
The
or
cost.
clarify anything that I have said that is not clear. Okay. Thank you very much. Yes. So
Yeah,
with the cost, the last time I checked at the Interior,
yeah.
registration was 3,000 cedis. That's the forms, and
Okay,
naturalization 6,000 cedis. And in fact, that's
okay,
really the only thing you need to, once you purchase the forms, the rest of the process kicks in actually.
okay. So please, can I come in, Madam Abigail?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you want to know with the business aspect for the immigrants, what do they have to do? If I want to speak into what the sentence he just made, that the kind of business they can do, or they have the right for all sort of business in Ghana, or are they limited to some few business they have to do in Ghana as a diaspora citizen?
Well, when it comes to businesses that diasporians can actually engage in, I don't think that is really our domain. Our responsibility is to issue permits to enable foreigners to work efficiently and legally in Ghana. And so usually our considerations would be, or one of the considerations would be, we are calling for investors all the time. So we don't put any um,
Restriction.
limitation on what kind of businesses people would want to do, or foreigners. Apart from what the GIPC Act proscribes, which I believe would be a thing for the GIPC facilitator to even speak more to, we would usually just look at what business you're engaged in, and whether for the position that your letter or your contract letter says, you can't readily find Ghanaians to occupy that position. And once that is answered, um, you bring in the necessary requirements, pay the statutory fees, and then your permit is issued. There are others who I believe the GIPC facilitator spoke about that. They issue their when they get the quotas from GIPC, that is a kind of work permit. So they bring it to Ghana Immigration, and then we issue them with residence permits. So, but if you apply directly to Ghana Immigration Service for work permits, it's called a work residence permit. So once you apply for your work permit, if it's approved, you don't have to pay another fee. All you need to do is to complete a form for residence permit, and it is issued in your passports. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Th- Thank you, Madam Abby. I think you've done so well for me. I've understood you very well. And this is a general question on behalf of this foundation. I want to ask all my presenters. I want to know if the foundation has the right or your support to act for the diasporan families or citizens. Maybe we have seen their documents and we are okay with them, and we want to partner them in business in Ghana. Can they be outside for us to go through the processes before they come in? I want to know whether Gather Foundation can work on the person's behalf.
Okay, so with Ghana Immigration Service, in fact, um, ideally the person, the
Mhm,
applicant, or you need to have a work
mhm,
permit before you come into the country. So
mm.
definitely, if you are not in the
Yeah.
country, then there ought to be somebody in Ghana facilitating that for you, because
Okay.
we haven't fully set up our online registration or application processes yet. So then somebody would
Okay.
physically have to come and do the application, submit the necessary documentation, pay the fees, and all of that. So you can do that. It's allowed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.